So basically all my video equipment is already packed, so I just decided to go live because I was thinking about certain important things that have been a part of my recent research. And so I decided just to record go live, probably will be reasonable for that format, because it's more like improvised text. I don't have any rigorous materials prepared for this talk. Just wanted to share some observations. So basically, this video would be, the theme of it will be what to know before choosing to become a raw vegan. Because for me, it was like a rude awakening at some point when I realized that this diet may be dysfunctional, because I had firm belief that it was the best thing I can do for myself, for my body, for my mind, for my spiritual life. And so I thought that raw vegan diet is literally the best of the best. So I adhered to it very strictly. I mean, within, like, I ate some like boiled legumes, but other than that, I was on a very strict regimen of raw diet. And of course, there were some thoughts like, what if my approach was wrong? What if I could do it differently? La la la. But like, eventually, just I felt like something was not working. So I decided to try introducing animal products into my diet, and for 3 weeks, I've been animal based pretty much. So this is the experiment that I've been running. And with that, I started researching. And when I started noticing certain symptoms, when I started noticing certain changes in my body that happened very rapidly in response to introduction of animal products, it sparked my new wave of running research. Because what alarmed me by the end of me following a raw vegan diet was loss of tone of skin, loss of skin kind of like texture, color. And another thing that I realized was a problem after I introduced animal products into my diet. I realized that my connective tissues were not at their peak performance, and they were clearly nutrition limited. And I thought for the past year and a half that my hips, my overall like body was just, I needed to work out more. I needed to stretch more, because I thought that, oh, I'm approaching 30s, probably that's time for when people start experiencing all those aches. But after 3 weeks, less than 3 weeks on eating animal based, I actually noticed that I no longer had that debilitating sensation that was like making me scared to do certain moves that I always was accustomed to. And so, with that in mind, I started researching even more, because what I learned about potentially very essential role of animal products was synthesis of collagen in vegans. And if you read any articles, if you follow any gurus, they all like to talk about how raw vegan diet is a fountain of youth. Yes, compared to standard American diet for a short period of time, raw vegan diet can give a very significant glow up, because you start suddenly pumping into the body everything that it was missing. Antioxidants and vitamins that are not typically present on a standard American diet. Then you also clear the bowels with a lot of fiber, regulate the digestion, and with all that, yes, initially you will have a very good glow up. But what happens is that vegans in general, and raw vegans especially, are not synthesizing collagen properly. And all the articles that are heavily endorsing plant based nutrition, owing specifically to the phytochemicals, those articles, for some reason, diverge so much with the articles written by cosmetologists who actually work with the skin, that it is kind of shocking. Because when you read the articles written by the cosmetologists, you find out that a cosmetologist can tell a skin of a vegan just by touching it or by visual examination. Moreover, the procedures for collagen stimulation are not recommended for vegans, Because, on the one hand, the results are very poor, so there's very little outcome from those procedures. Moreover, the results, this little outcome, fade out after after several months much faster to a larger degree than in omnivore people who get complete animal protein, who get animal fats with their diet, who get some sources of like collagen preforming, some preformed collagen with their diet basically. So this makes those procedures unethical to perform on vegans. Again, just owing to the malproduction of collagen. Moreover, like there are several mechanisms to that. First is lack of supplementation of the complete protein. So there is protein deficiency, there is collagen deficiency, and on the other hand, there is also a very bad environment in this dermis itself that is not conducive to production of collagen and retention of collagen. So these are the two factors. And yes, raw vegan diet compared to vegan diet would probably be beneficial at first because again you supply more protective substances. You supply more antioxidants, more vitamins that are otherwise are gone from food upon thermal treatment. But later on, as you start wearing down your ability to absorb nutrients from raw foods, when again you exhaust your natural stores of nutrients, of certain like fat soluble vitamins, of your ability to extract proteins, it's no longer going to work. So I'm not a proponent of long-term adherence to raw vegan diet. And I noticed it myself, and I'm now finding studies that support my observation. And so what happens with the procedures that stimulate collagen in vegans, you can trigger excessive stimulation of collagen in very exhausted, in very deficient, depleted substrate. So you will set yourself up for premature aging going forward. Basically, if you do those like shock therapies on vegan skin that is already rid of collagen, you do the shock therapy that will stimulate its production for some period of time. It will exhaust the cells that produce collagen, and so later the person will not be able to produce it even more. Which will create conditions for very rapid and even earlier aging. So this is the mechanism, and this is what you read in the articles written for cosmetologists, by cosmetologists. So this is something really alarming, and when I feel it, so right now I don't see any changes in the tone of my skin yet, but what I feel is the changes in my joints. I feel the changes in my muscles. I feel the changes in the ligaments. I don't know what exactly happened. I don't know what the mechanism for it was. I know that collagen takes anywhere from 1 to 3 months to replenish. To start seeing the results, you need to be on collagen supplementation or protein supplementation for at least 3 months. So it seems unrealistic that it would make a difference right now. But something happened. And something interesting as well to think about. I literally lived being a raw vegan, of course not vegan, on raw vegan diet. I lived that way with those now I realized that it was symptoms for a year and a half after they started. So it took me a year and a half to develop them, to acknowledge them that they began. And then I lived with them for a year and a half. And now, only after reintroduction of animal products, I realized that those were the symptoms that were exclusively nutrition dependent. So this is something interesting that I've discovered. And I don't even know what hazards adherence to raw vegan diet had systemically in my case, because if it was collagen, if it was protein, it is our heart muscle, it is our heart valves, it is our gut, it is our stomach. And plus, also with large amounts of food, when you create the distension of your stomach, of your gut, plus you're also degrading collagen, plus you're also not repairing the tissues well. I'm just getting kind of terrified of the whole notion of this diet because it is why it I would like to formulate in the following way that as like a person who does, for example, problem solving, right? I would like to use the word bad for it. A raw vegan diet is a bad solution because it implies lots of assumptions to be fulfilled. You need to make many assumptions for it to potentially work. And okay, short term, it likely will work for many people, unless they have, for example, high uric acid, sensitivity for oxalates, some like disorders that make them unable to handle oxalate loads. So this may be a separate issue. But long term, it is likely not a favorable path because, again, because of a lot of assumptions that have to be made to make this diet potentially work. And with those assumptions, by those assumptions, I mean that we absorb nutrients properly. Before we absorb them, we are capable of breaking down food matter into particulates small enough such that we can extract the nutrients from the cells of the plants early on and actually get them absorbed. With that in mind, you can think, okay, what if we make smoothie to break down the cellular metrics for extraction of nutrients? Yes, it can be one path, but with that, with smoothies especially, they're sweet. We are missing on the first digestive step, that is exposure of of complex carbohydrates to saliva to break them down. Then we're also eating too fast for it to be physiological. And then the third aspect is that unless you're using some vacuum blender, you're also oxidizing the nutrients, which is also something that's not supposed to happen naturally. So it is a unnatural path that has some shortcomings to it. This is why I wouldn't deem it to be a prolific solution for the problem. And then also, it is not physiological to eat baby food in general and on so many levels. Then, if we think about juicing, juicing has same issues as smoothie making. Plus, you subtract some fiber, which, of course, again, for people who suffer from malabsorption, can improve the absorption of nutrients. But then, for people who again suffer, for example, from oxalate sensitivity, stripping off the fiber that can slow down the release of certain things that people can be sensitive to will also be not beneficial. So this makes it kind of very individual for people, and this is why I think we cannot just recommend raw vegan diet to just anyone in any circumstance. I think it is unethical to do so because a lot of people can have certain individual problems. And I mentioned oxalates. Okay, oxalates are something that's present in foods that are green, the greens and nuts and seeds. If we think about the fruitarian diet, fruitarian diet is its own school of thought, is its own party, because fruits that we have in the modern day, they're not particularly natural fruits, so they're like more dessert items because they're too sugary, they're too acidic, and not many people can handle them to begin with. I know of several people that I talked to, worked with, that cannot handle fructose. Not even from juices, not even fructose isolate. Fructose from fruits. There are people with IBS with actual sensitivity for fructose. And fructose triggers IBS in them. Then, despite, of course, you'll find articles that fruits, certain fruit juices help to relieve IBS or bowel inflammation, but balance. We don't know where it will shift. So there are people like that, then most people develop dental problems on fruitarian diet because fruits are rid of minerals. You need to eat so much of fruit to get all necessary minerals, that you will start kind of offsetting the balance of those minerals by subjecting your teeth, for example, to a lot of fruit acids. I'm not talking about sugars because fruit sugars are, in terms of dental well-being, fruit sugars are much more benign than grains or sweets because fruit sugars, they're easily washed away with the saliva. But again, to actually expose your teeth to so much acid all the time, it is not physiological, and many people prove it by developing erosions. And erosions is not something that's easy to treat, because there are toothpastes that can help restore enamel to some degree. I actually use them once, on and off. They're toothpastes with non-hydroxyapatite that help to remineralize the enamel to some degree, and they also simultaneously they also strip away the any like mineral buildup. So this is like double action principle. But yeah, this is not sustainable path for people to eat fruits, to live off fruits exclusively. And I know that there are people who do that. There are several influencers who seem to thrive on fruitarian diet, but do we know whether they actually thrive off it? So this is a question to answer, and I think everybody has to answer this question themselves, and perhaps through practice if they're really interested in this lifestyle. Then another danger of fruitarianism, potential danger that is quiet and that is asymptomatic until it is gallstones, because a lot of fructose stimulates production of cholesterol by the liver, but does not promote the expulsion of bile, which means that the substrate for formation of gallstones is being produced, but it sits inside of the gallbladder and it doesn't get purged. So this is another quiet danger of fruitarian diet. And with mineral deficiencies, body can buffer minerals for some time because skeleton is partially a source of minerals. It's a depot for minerals. So the body can leach minerals pretty effectively from the skeleton when it needs those minerals for forming enzymes, for example, for generation of the DNA, for neuron transmission, for some transmission of electric signals. But at some point, it just becomes too much, and it can cause degradation, loss of bone mass as well. And in conditions when we do not get dietary cholesterol, we also malabsorb vitamin D, or even from the sun exposure, which means that the delivery of minerals back into the bones, establishing the equilibrium with the bone, will be less effective, which can shift the balance of bone desorption and bone remodeling toward bone desorption, which is also an unfavorable thing. So this is another fruitarian path on raw vegan diet. And I know again that there are a lot of people who adhere to this lifestyle and they claim that they succeed on it. I don't know how to resolve this conundrum, because I know that I, for example, and several of people who I work with, they cannot sustain on fruits. I tried eating high fruit diet for a week, and I immediately got white stains on my nails. Right now, you see, I don't have any white spots. But when I was eating fruits, I just had an outburst of white spots on my nails after 2 or 3 days. And I didn't increase the amount of fruits too much. I just increased them past my comfort zone. And that was enough. Oh, hello, Janet. I'm a CD, a recovering vegan. Yeah. Hi. Likewise, welcome to the club. So now, article that I found yesterday, actually went through one very interesting paper last night. Actually, it was very easy to read. It was a review article from 2021, I think. And the article was studying relationships between the protein, different sources of protein, collagen supplementation, and bone health. And it was found that we need to eat twice as much whole plant protein if we're not opting for some isolated amino acids in order to make up for the protein deficiency on plant-based diet, which puts us in the category of some, again, hyperconsumption of plant foods, plant matter, which is in turn associated with a ton of adverse effects in many people. So this is also something to consider. Raw vegan diet, again, works brilliantly at first because it is an elimination diet. You remove all processed foods by definition. You remove all cooked grains, and grains are one of the super inflammatory foods for many people. Then it can be different categories of grains, but they tend to be problematic for many people from different ethnicities, from different regions. There will be different degree of sensitivity, basically. And I would like to encourage you to observe it, whether you have certain adverse reactions to grains. I'm among those lucky people who has migraines, so I can kind of track what foods give me this reaction and which foods don't. Because migraine is such a thing that these symptoms are very gradual and very comprehensive. So a migraine onset is associated with certain feeling in the body. And then if you, for example, have some two combined trigger factors, then it can go and blow up into full migraine. But if you have just one factor, you have just pre-migraine. And this pre-migraine is something that I know I have in response to grains and legumes, for example. So vegan diet for me in general is either raw vegan diet or just don't even go that route. So interestingly, while on raw vegan diet, I was able to eat legumes, boiled legumes, but with a lot of fiber. So if I ate a salad with those legumes, I would not have much migraine response, which tells me that eating plethora of fiber, it either greatly slows down release of proteins or just eliminates a huge fraction of proteins from the GI tract so they don't get absorbed. And this brings me to the thoughts that this high fiber diet, if we think about diet rich in greens, seeds, and nuts, may just be antagonist to protein absorption, to normal protein metabolism from plant foods. This is why I think people who are, I don't know, there are some vegans who cheat, there are vegans who eat supplements, there are vegans who take some protein shakes, there are vegans who, again, just bulk up on a bunch of grains and legumes that, for example, I cannot do. So this route is probably makes it possible to, for example, gain muscle mass and retain muscle mass. But if you eat foods that reduce the inflammation load that comes from consumption of grains and legumes, such as some greens, high fiber things, you're likely just eliminating this whole. So you're not getting as much protein as you think you would be getting, just because of high fiber content and the lack of absorptivity of proteins from this matter. And yes, all our ancestors, probably heritage of any tribe, any people, any nation, had history of Lent, some religious Lent that I think also was practiced during pagan times. Everybody had those periods of 40 days at a time, 1 month, couple of weeks when animal products were not consumed. It also is an Indian tradition, if not even Indian, specifically in Ayurvedic tradition, it is recommended to go on a fast in between the seasons. So there is a tradition of going on some like low protein period at a time, but it is expected that you bounce back to consuming normal, natural amounts of proteins that are actually bioavailable, such that you can build your body and restore it. The trap of raw veganism is detox. And detox means, again, this is the effect that happens at first. You remove everything unwanted. You regulate your digestion. You regulate your microbiome. You rehydrate your body. Your cells, like bad cells, they start like getting exterminated and get removed from your body. So you purge your lymph, you cleanse your blood, you cleanse your, hopefully again, if you don't have oxalate reactions, you cleanse your kidneys, because a lot of raw foods are diuretic. You cleanse your liver if you are still eating fats, bitter greens. This all happens. But you need to build the body afterwards. You cannot just remove something that doesn't work. You don't strip the wallpaper off your wall or strip the paint and leave it as is. You go buy a bucket of new paint and you repaint it. So you need to ensure that after you've cleansed your body with certain like high fiber, low protein, high hydration matter, you need to rebuild it. You need to supply materials to build. And to support the regeneration, you need a lot of potent foods. This is what I'm coming up with. Because again, I noticed that at some point my regeneration of body kind of like dropped. And when I felt the contrast after reintroduction of high density nutrition, how I reacted to the introduction of high nutrition density foods, I realized that it was a problem that I was not aware of. And here is another danger, because when you are deficient in something, for a good example will be people with anemia. Let's say a person has iron deficient anemia. They cannot metabolize iron properly, store it properly, use it properly, whatever happens. They can live with depression, they can live with exhaustion, they can live with feeling that they don't have willpower to do anything, that they're lazy, that they don't have any enthusiasm for life, that they are barely keeping up with basic tasks, survival tasks. And when those people get IV with iron, after they get diagnosed, they realize that for years they had been living at literally 10% of their capacity. Deficiencies, they are like boiling a frog. They come very slowly, they evolve slowly. And it happens when it becomes critical that your body just screams to change something. Because this inner animal, it doesn't lie. We can play any mental tricks, we can do anything, but this internal roar that is very eager to express its needs for survival, for being prolific, for being a libidinous, active person, that thing will eventually come and grab and ask for what it needs. But again, when you are inside of the deficiency and it is not critical yet, it is not like severely threatening your life quality or life, you're not thinking about it. You don't even think in that direction because it's so gradual, you don't know that you have it. You don't know that you have a problem. And like with like dysfunctional relationships, sometimes just one day you find out that you lost yourself. You're shattered in pieces. And this is when there is no barrier between you and solving the problem, getting rid of that thing that is on the way to your best life. And this moment, it unfortunately comes at different stages in different people. Because the level of belief that you are doing something inherently good can be so strong that it can carry you through the most noticeable, the most debilitating symptoms. And there is a mental trap of needing to detox more, needing to do something outside of nutrition more, and you try it all because you believe that your nutrition is supreme. But it may not be. It is very important too, when you are considering going on a raw diet, to actually keep an open mind. Always keep the door open, and not to your past, to your dysfunctional habits, but always research whether it could be better. Because I remember when I was, it literally, my paradigm shifted like immediately. But when I was still in the paradigm of thinking that I am doing the best that I can possibly with my nutrition, I would not be able to hear, to listen to the opposite point of view. I clinged to my arguments so strongly. I would go and find the articles supporting my claims because this is what I firmly believed in. And trust me, it is so easy to interpret everything that you see in favor of your belief that becomes foundational for your personality. And so, as a result of all that, I ended up feeling in such a self deception. It felt so non genuine by the end that I felt very, very profound existential distress because I was feeling that, first of all, imagine your belief shatters, and not even believe the whole theory based on it. And as I mentioned before, the theory, the hypothesis of raw vegan nutrition is bad because it is based on many assumptions. And when you are in the paradigm that it is the best thing possible, you are very eager to accept that those assumptions hold true. And you are not capable of facing the facts. So you are more tempted to assume that whatever problems may exist, they will not be of concern for you. And so yeah, my belief system and my theory started breaking and requiring revisions. Then moreover, when you are on some exotic diet, especially on veganism, vegan community itself is very happy to accept you. When you are only, for example, showing interest, when you're vegan curious, the vegan community becomes very, very kind to you. It shows its best face. And another important thing is that when you are looking into, for example, raw veganism, it all starts with health benefits. You're being sold the health benefits, the story of how you can make your life better. And should something go wrong, you will notice that suddenly you will start hearing that it was all about the ethics and that you desiring to care for your health is wrong. Even though that was the entry point, it was the sales pitch. So this is another thing. And when you become a part of such a community that is small, that is aggressive, that is very strongly developing, that has a lot of endorsement, that has a lot of studies funded, that has a lot of information out there that shows that it's cool, when it also is based off when it's also based on the idea of righteousness and doing good, and you kind of start accepting this more than just diet but ideology into yourself, it also becomes really difficult to just break ties with it. break those mental ties. And I noticed, like in the comments, I received some comments, people were discussing that I'm lacking wisdom because I didn't make the connection and stuff like that. It is very funny for two reasons. Reason number one, first of all, if people are so mentally and spiritually superior, I have a question: what level, what degree of spiritual enlightenment makes you compelled to grant yourself a right to judge somebody's wisdom, spiritual level, and stuff like that? Because I read the, um, what was that book? It was basically based off the teachings of Tibetan Buddhism, and it was specifically the teachings on not achieving the enlightenment, but how to work towards your spiritual mastery. It was a very, like, very rigorous, very strict textbook. I didn't find anything about granting yourself a right to do that. But then the second thing is about making connection is that connections, emotions, our understanding of things is dynamic. Those things are dynamic and they change in life. And when you can make one connection at one point in life, but then you can make another connection later in life that will be much stronger connection than the previously made connection. So this is also that part that is very conflicting, that makes it hard to break free from the, for example, raw veganism, even when things stop working out. So with that in mind also, following a mental hygiene for practicing an ultimate personal truthfulness and authenticity, knowing, like basically adhering to your like voice, to your intuition, to your like truth, to not go against your nature is very important. Because again, it is a very strong complex surrounding food, surrounding the diet, that is much more than a diet that is associated with a lot of guilt, shame, that is associated with a lot of like contrast between being good and sacrificing or being bad, selfish, and taking advantage of, let's say, animals. So this is another thing. When you are considering raw veganism, like I heard this joke from a guy, like he was like saying that you're worried about entering relationship and how to build a relationship, but he says I would be more worried about how to leave the relationship, right? So this applies here too. If you are considering entering this school of thought, think up front how you would be leaving it should things not work, because again, many assumptions, many things have to work out in order for this lifestyle to work out for you specifically, including your genetics, heritage, the approach that you're taking, the pre-existing conditions, the in general, like the lifestyle you can afford. All of those things cumulatively, including some biology that you have no idea about, because even science has no idea about it yet. All those things are unknowns. They're encrypted in the what if scenario. So you don't know. You just don't know. The entry is literally a gamble. You need to test it and see if it works, being always on top of it, being willing to exit it. So this is a very important thing to understand if you're interested in trying this lifestyle, because I think that it is not in my power to encourage or discourage anyone from trying this lifestyle. I think it is all personal choice, and I am delivering this information, these thoughts, based on my experience, based on some explanations for things that I'm trying to find and harvest, because I want to contribute to the pool of information surrounding this lifestyle. Because I know that it is easy, for example, to be a carnivore or a person who is just some MD who studied nutrition. and talk about this lifestyle from the perspective of well-known knowledge. And people will be just like, oh, you're just this one of those like corrupt people. And they will just discredit your opinion right away because there are, again, healing stories. But when you are a person who went through it, studied it, accepted it as the best thing possible, so you were in mental alignment with this lifestyle, and then saw, without any placebo in place, saw that just biochemically it doesn't work, then it is a totally different story. Because it is like another anecdotal evidence that is adding to the pool of information, because a lot of people build businesses, myself included, around this lifestyle. And when you build a business, that business model that sells a certain lifestyle, when your business is selling raw vegan lifestyle, you cannot just easily withdraw from it. So, because again, it will be very strange move. Suddenly imagine you're endorsing some lifestyle, but then you found that it doesn't work. I don't know what level of actorship it should be, or like lack of principles it should be, to keep pushing this lifestyle when you, for example, do not adhere to it fully. When you yourself don't follow your advice, you don't live what you preach, and I don't know. So this is another thing that can add some lack of transparency in this whole thing, because there's also a lot of commercial interest involved in this lifestyle on both sides, from people who are promoting anything opposite of this lifestyle, and from the people who are promoting this lifestyle, and different tricks and tips. And another thing you will notice is that this lifestyle is presented in a way often that you will fail if you don't like adhere to certain specific set of rules, if you don't buy some like obscure course, if you don't purchase certain instructions, if you don't purchase certain nutrition plan, you will fail. So what does this failure mean? Unfortunately, in raw vegans, the failure on a raw vegan diet is literally, over extended period of time, means severe depletion of body resources. It's literally that rare case in which certain practice can lead to the same outcomes as being in some experimental camp. So this is the contrast between doing it right and doing it wrong. And the price for this delta is very high. And so with that in mind, it also makes it kind of questionable. Should you choose this lifestyle for life? So those are my thoughts. I think I had something else as well to say, but I don't know. I have only a couple of people right now on the stream. So if you have any questions, comments, let's discuss. I want to close the blinds and probably move a little bit. But I basically just wanted to share all those things because they've been on my mind. And when I was also indoctrinated, I refused to see the filters on influencers' faces. I refused to see the fillers. I refused. I'm so shocked that my mind was literally closed from all this visual information. And now, of course, it's like, I just feel so strange, and I don't know if I'm angry at myself for trusting in all this, or if I'm already calm about it. I don't know. So I don't know, like what would be the optimum of nutrition? I don't know yet. I feel like there are literally so many things that I learned from being raw vegan. At the same time, I circled back to a lot of the things that I practiced in the past and that worked so well. So I basically gained appreciation to a lot for a lot of things from the past. But the main benefit of raw diet was that I literally got rid of I got rid of sugar cravings, I got rid of grains, and now, by the way, after 3 weeks on animal products, I cannot eat beans at all anymore. Just thought of them makes me like repelled so much. So it's something that definitely, when my body is given a choice, I guess it just wouldn't go for legumes anymore. It's crazy. So if no one wants to pitch in, I probably will just save the stream because just again wanted to put my thoughts in video form, get something out there, and we'll see. In general, after a raw diet, I feel such a barrier to ever associating myself with food again, to ever like talk about it, to ever think about it so much. What diet is right, what diet is wrong. I feel like it's such an individual story. Such an individual story. I know that for some people, again, they have their mindset, everything is set so perfectly to just roll with, for example, raw plant-based lifestyle. Works for them because, again, they chose it. They mentally chose it and accepted it. For them, it is part of identity. It's their literally like, no, life. Their principal thing in life. Like we'll have like basis in life. What is our foundational core thing that is that we revolve our rest of our life around? For example, for some people it will be family, so it will be like, for example, choosing jobs exclusively in the area where the family lives, or making certain choices in favor of family members. For some people it will be like self-realization, career, creative realization. And so those people will be trying to find partners and adapt their family members to suit that goal of self-realization. For some people, it is some like belief. It is a cult. It is certain, I don't know, like religious belief. So they will be adapting their entire life to adhere to the rules of the cult, to the lifestyle proposed by the cult to keep fitting in. And so when we deal with like dietary things, I think they're very close to it because when we allow certain biological functions, certain abstinence, certain like extreme control over certain biological function override our life, this I think is one of the signals that it may be kind of off because like for example religions, a lot of religions, they oppress sexuality in humans. So they take the biological function and they put a lot of pressure, they put a lot of control over this area of life. Then we talk about veganism, for example. Veganism and in general, any diet or diet-related movement, and they take eating and put a lot of control in that area. And so this is kind of the most profound mechanism of oppressing self because biological functions, they're primordial, they're very animalistic, and they sit like above our neocortex. So controlling those biological impulses and needs is the ultimate power. And if a person is gaining more from participating in a certain movement by adhering to those like biological regulations because their psyche, their lifestyle just agrees with it, then it's probably a beneficial thing. But if a person stops benefiting from it, but starts destroying themselves, their psyche, their like sense of ownership over their life through living in that cult, in that system of control, then just something alarming, something that needs certain corrections. But again, everybody's different, and I know that a lot of people, they just like return, for example, to certain communities with very strict regulations and guidelines. They don't want that freedom. So for some people, yeah, this just works because it gives them sense of security primarily. So like when you know, when you know like that all focus of your life is around what you eat, and your success depends on what you eat, your perceived success, your worth depends on what you eat. Eating is very easy. Eating or not eating, it's extremely easy. It doesn't require you to exercise any higher cognitive functions, basically. You just eat or not eat, and we have this center of controlling our eating behaviors, which is also overdeveloped in women. That makes women more prone to developing eating disorders because for women it's much easier to control, for some women with certain accentuations of psyche, with certain traumas, it's much easier to control what they eat. And so in this circumstance, this this cycle of extreme control over consumption or not consumption of food becomes dominant trait that fills the existence with meaning. So this is another thing. I don't know if I want to rumble about the misogyny of raw vegan diet, by the way. I think it will be kind of fitting here, and while we're there already, let's just talk. Another trait that I forgot to mention of raw veganism is misogyny. On the one hand, yes, many women who are like heard of, they go on this diet, and again, is a very potent elimination diet rich in vitamins and certain minerals, like magnesium, for example, with certain down regulation of estrogen, with certain like um, natural phytochemical correction of estrogen. A lot of women heal certain gynecological problems on raw vegan diet at first. And as I mentioned, this lifestyle sucks you in, and you don't see any other options for yourself. It is, imagine if a person from standard American diet goes on an elimination diet, finds out that elimination of certain foods caused them to feel much better, but they never add high nutrition foods back into their diet. So they're in this perpetual elimination diet that gradually rids them of the nutrients and depletes their body. And why I think that raw vegan movement has a lot of misogyny in it, because first of all, if you look at the percentage of gurus, the most renowned gurus, they're males, and if you look at the likely client of those gurus, it will be women. So the product that is generated by the raw vegan community is generated predominantly by men, by some alternative medicine practitioners, and this content, this information is geared towards predominantly the women. Then, what are the typical concerns of women? Well, a lot of people, a lot of in general, raw veganism, a lot of marketing is based off weight loss in general. But weight loss alone is not a helpful thing because people take some like crazy pills, crazy injections to lose weight. Losing weight is not equivalent to health. Losing weight is a step towards achieving health, but it is not health. It's not equivalent to health. And raw vegan diet is marketed towards losing weight because, again, I mentioned in one of my videos how to safely lose excess fat, excess weight on raw vegan diet. Raw vegan diet is the ultimate form of whole food diet because the foods don't undergo any augmentation, and thus those foods are like complete opposite of what usually causes weight gain. So eat a lot of fiber. Fiber mediates sugar, so you kind of slow down the metabolic syndrome, then also you kind of downregulate estrogen. For people with obesity, it may be a useful thing, and then you also regulate the GI tract, so on and so forth. Losing fat is okay, but on the opposite side of spectrum, there is promotion of literally anorexia, and here is the vicious cycle that I would like to present, that I kind of formulated as a part of my observations. So, what happens? At first, okay, women lose weight, start working out, everything is fine, first couple of years. Then what happens? Without any cholesterol, without any dietary cholesterol, a woman will start losing estrogen because cholesterol is needed for formation of steroid hormones. She's losing estrogen. Then estrogen does what? Estrogen protects our blood vessels and bones. So loss of estrogen, loss of natural youthfulness, sex hormones in women is associated with loss of protective action against excessive bone loss. So the balance shifts towards bone desorption. When this happens, women is advised to work out more, because working out, as we know, it helps with building muscle mass and it helps with rebuilding the bones. Actually, funny article I found that lactate that forms when we work out may be mediating the bone growth, bone mass gains after associated with working out. I found this found article describing the mechanism. I haven't read in depth, but I was curious, so I found it. I was curious in general on subject of lactate and bone density. So she's advised to work out more and to build the bone. She starts working out more. The recovery doesn't happen because after some time, you lose nutrients. You cannot digest foods properly, because if you live in the chronic lack of protein, you are not rebuilding your gut walls properly. So your gut does not work properly, does not extract nutrients properly. You may also start developing stomach acid deficiency. You may also start developing enzymatic deficiencies, like from your enzyme producing organs. So plus also with a huge amount of fiber, you're eliminating more nutrients than you absorb, potentially. Again, it's an assumption problem. May work for you, may not work this way for you either. So she is not getting protein to rebuild the muscle. So the damage happens, the rebuilding of muscle doesn't happen. There are no resources to rebuild the bone tissue either, because there's not enough protein, there's no collagen. Bone is made up of proteins. It's not, mineral matter is there, but the matrix is protein based. So she's working out, working her ass off in the gym. What happens? There's no recovery. What happens next? Cortisol goes up. Cortisol starts wearing down what? Adrenal glands. And adrenal glands do what? Adrenal glands take over the function of estrogen production in women after they hit the menopause. And moreover, we're dealing with the condition when estrogen is low, when there is artificially created early menopause already. And we're also starting influencing, because we want to adhere to this imagery of an exemplar raw vegan woman who is thin, muscular, powerful, and healthy, which are working out without supplying proper nutrition. So we have a lot of cortisol wearing down adrenals. Adrenals will be fatigued, so they won't be able to produce, to compensate for the lack of steroid hormones. So what is left out of woman? We receive a mummy. Like, this is what women turn into on raw vegan diet. Sooner or later. It happens pretty early on, unfortunately. So the expiration date of the raw vegan success, in most cases, there are of course exceptions, but in lots of cases, it happens pretty early on. And the mechanisms are pretty easy. And I think it is in the root of the raw vegan diet to be inherently misogynistic. And here is another super bad idea that I heard. I mentioned it at first that it is men who sit on top of the ideology of raw veganism. And in the book that I read, Return to the Brain of Eden, this thought was pronounced. Can you guess the thought? That a healthy human body doesn't bleed. And the propaganda of that no periods equals good is pretty powerful. And a lot of girls strive to achieve this thing or try to overcome their animalistic feeling that something is off, but the guru says that is good, and they just roll with it without changing anything about their lifestyle. And if you listen to any girl who is recovering after an eating disorder, nutritionally deprived eating disorder, how they celebrate their periods, how they celebrate feeling like a woman again, how they celebrate pumping enough estrogen that makes them glow, that makes, again, their bones strong, their blood vessels protected. So this is one of the major misogynistic twists of raw veganism, that healthy person doesn't bleed. And it's all rooted in the fact that men don't bleed, but women do bleed. And men who are pronouncing this speech, they were born also. This, like, I will prove right now that healthy body does bleed, even if without the periods. Those men, when they were born from a vagina, and the process of birth is associated with bleeding in the process. A little bit larger scale shedding happens during the birth of those men who pronounce these speeches and all other humans than during periods, but the same principle. And so the birth of those gurus who dare to pronounce that we need to strive for losing our cycle, the birth of those gurus was associated with mucus that they fight against so badly, and with blood as well. So a healthy body does bleed because the peak of human health is proliferation. It is the reproductive function, because it is the peak of health, essentially, when a person can bear a healthy child and give birth healthily. And healthy birth is associated with bleeding. So on the peak of human health, there is bleeding. So the hypothesis of that healthy people don't bleed was debunked. And so periods are training. The womb trains itself because it's a muscle. It trains itself every month to expel something, because it's the peak of womb's function is to expel a human. So expulsion of blood is normal because the lining of the uterus is being supplied by blood vessels. Every month it forms blood vessels. So those blood vessels break off because this lining of uterus is supposed to be able to accept an egg, a fertilized egg. It must be ready for it at each month. And so shutting off the menstrual cycle, this is a stupidest idea. This is the most evil and anti-woman and the most misogynistic idea, is still alive in the community. And women are encouraged to undergo a detox. Nobody will name you a single substance, besides maybe heavy metals, that women are supposed to detox from. And despite that, this idea is very, very loud and very pronounced. And it's very easy to explain to poor, gullible people and women that, oh, you lost your periods because you're now so clean after following my starvation protocol. It's amazing news. So nobody thinks that loss of cycle is associated with much more than just not bleeding. And again, women on hormone replacement therapies due to a variety of different ailments, they wouldn't volunteer. They take hormones voluntarily for a reason. And gurus try to tell women to not produce hormones naturally because it is somehow associated with toxins. And then another thing that I hear is that there is this conception that happens when there are cycles, when the ovulation happens, but periods don't go. And they say that there are people who conceive children without menstruations. It may be that, imagine, a woman stops menstruating. For example, she doesn't care to have a child or something at the moment, whether she has it or not. She leads sexual life. She leads sexual life, and then maybe there's like one ovulatory cycle once in a blue moon. She gets pregnant during it. Please, explanation. Because she relaxes. She sees that she doesn't get pregnant or something. And then boom, the first ovulation she has, she's pregnant, she no longer has, again, periods don't come. So this is something, yeah, very, 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 very deeply wrong with the thing. And I never felt comfortable with this notion because I'm very connected with my cycle, and actually 2 cycles that I had before introduced animal products were weird. I mean, they were not like something outrageous, but just different. And that also alarmed me a little bit on the background of everything. So this is something for women to listen to as well. Their body, their woman, their feminine, like female intuition and connection with the body, because I believe that women are, again, being more complex hormonally, are more tied to the biological part of their body. So for women, it is very important to track whether their body, their feminine essence, is performing the way they're happy about. And another thing is about the body image. There's this anorexic standard. Anorexic extremely either like shredded or just like rid of any fat, because fat is what is demonic. Fat is demonic. It also, again, with this like fitness vicious cycle, as I mentioned, trying to achieve with raw diet, trying to achieve some super skeletal shape, needs to be addressed at the psychotherapist or psychiatrist has an eating disorder and the body image disorder. Because again, there are a lot of role models that, just as with any, I don't know, like in Russia, there was a tea popular. It was called Flying Bird. The tea was some like super laxative that was supposed to bring relief and weight loss. It's, I mean, essentially the same thing. Just a little bit more difficult and more complex. The raw diet and especially starvation protocols. So for slimming down without thinking about micronutrients, without thinking about getting all essential nutrition, for building a prolific, strong, and libidinous and powerful functional body, and not only the body but also the mind, that can solve difficult problems, that can function in the society. And of course, again, there are exceptions. There are exceptions. I'm not trying to say that everybody and everything is like this. I'm just observing the dangerous trends. And again, if this video is to be a warning for a person who is interested in raw veganism, be alert. Be alert about what you are about to embark on, what you are about to buy. And there is only one real judge, only one real measure, is your intuition. And not intuition like some parasitic intuition, but very deep animalistic intuition that is not based off any insecurities, any guilt, desires to be good, and stuff like that. Very deeply rooted animalistic voice that will always guide you where you are supposed to be. And with that, you need to be very familiar with your shadow, and you need to be very open to shedding off all the desires that all the desires associated with being, with flattering someone, with like being good, with being convenient, with being proper. So this is it, I think. Covered more than I wanted because I wanted to make a separate video on the uncertain else things, but probably this video would be good. So I don't know. If you notice touch trends, please drop in the comment. I want to mount my phone maybe somewhere because I'm tired of holding it. What do I have? Start the poll. Should have started beforehand. So if there are no questions or comments, I'm just going to go. Thank you everyone who attended.